You know, if you're selling a Virginia home with a septic system, listen closely because the rules surrounding real estate septic inspections have changed, and some of the information being shared online is just flat out wrong. So, no, Virginia does not automatically require every homeowner to get a septic inspection before selling. But if an inspection is ordered as part of the transaction, Virginia now has specific rules governing who can perform it, what must be inspected, what belongs in the contract, and what the final report must say. And if you're selling a rural home, acreage property, farm, or equestrian property in Chesapeake, Suffolk, Pungo, or Isle of Wight, or anywhere else in the Hampton Roads area, understanding this before you list could help you prevent confusion, renegotiation, and a delayed closing. Now, in this video, I'm breaking down what the law actually says and what it does not say, and the steps I believe a septic property seller should take before putting a home on the market. Now, I'm Scott Stamper, the Cowboy real estate agent, and I help homeowners throughout the Hampton Roads area understand what it takes to sell their properties without wasting money or getting blindsided during the transaction. Now, if you're ready, let's begin with the biggest misconception. Virginia did not pass a law requiring every seller to order a septic inspection. Now, under the current law, an inspection is an examination requested by a lender, a real estate licensee, a prospective buyer, or another impacted party as a condition of sale, refinancing, or title transfer. Now, that distinction matters. A septic inspection might become part of your contract. A buyer might request one during the inspection period. A lender or loan program might require additional septic documentation, or a seller could decide to have the system inspected before listing. But that is different from saying every Virginia seller is automatically required by law to order one. The new rules govern the inspection once it is being performed in the connection with a real estate transaction. The first major requirement concerns who may perform that inspection. Virginia says the individual must hold a valid license as an on-site sewage system operator, on-site sewage system installer, or on-site soil evaluator. That means you shouldn't simply assume that every company capable of pumping a tank is also authorized to conduct a real estate septic inspection. The same business might offer both services, but the actual person performing the inspection must possess one of the licenses authorized under Virginia law. Now, before scheduling anything, ask a very direct question. Are you currently licensed in Virginia to perform a septic system inspection connected to a real estate transaction? Then verify the person's credentials. That one step could prevent you from paying for a service that does not meet the requirements of your transaction. Now, if you're considering selling a home with a septic, comment the word septic below, or just look in the description below and I'll have a preparation checklist which will help you organize the records and information you may need before listing. Now, the next major change involves the inspection contract. Before conducting the inspection, the authorized inspector must give the client or the client's representative a written signed contract. That contract must describe the scope of the services, identify the associated cost, provide permission for the inspection, and state that a complete inspection requires pumping the septic tank. Now, this is important because pumping and inspecting are related, but they are not automatically identical services. Virginia law allows the client to decline pumping, but that decision has to be documented in the contract. Who is the client? It is generally the person who orders and contracts for the inspection. Depending on how the transaction is structured, that could be the buyer, seller, or another party. So, Don't rely on a verbal conversation such as, I thought the tank was being pumped, or I thought this price included everything. Get the scope of work in writing. Ask whether pumping is included, whether there will be any additional charges for uncovering accessible components, and precisely what report will be provided when the work is done. Now, let's discuss what the inspector is supposed to examine. The inspector must inspect and report on readily accessible and openable components depending on the system that may include a septic tank, pump tank, distribution devices, treatment units, control panels, and dispersal field. The inspector also examines applicable components identified in the operation permit and looks for visible conditions that could affect the system, including vegetation, grading, and signs of harmful water entry. But the phrase readily accessible is important. Now, under Virginia law, readily accessible generally means something can be approached, opened, or entered without damaging property or altering the surrounding space or equipment. The definition does not include removing more than 30 inches of surface material to uncover a lid, distribution device, or inspection port. Here is the practical lesson for sellers. Don't wait until inspection day to start wondering where the tank, access lid, and drain fields are located. Try to locate your septic records before listing. Find any permits, designs, maintenance records, pumping receipts, repair invoices, and operator reports you may have. If you don't have those records, your local health department may have information about the system's approved design and or capacity. You should also make sure reasonable access isn't blocked by stored equipment, excessive vegetation, fencing, personal property, or debris. That does not mean you should dig up the yard yourself or attempt septic work you are not qualified to perform. It means you should identify potential access problems early and ask the licensed professional what needs to be done. Now, we get to the written report. Now, unless the parties agree otherwise in writing, the inspector must give the client a written report within 10 business days from the start of the inspection. That report must identify the components inspected, disclose anything that was not inspected and explain why, document damaged or defective components, and indicate whether the system is operating as intended. The report must also explain the consequences of any adverse conditions and recommend further evaluation by an appropriately licensed professional when necessary. Now, here's another important change that could prevent a lot of arguments. The authorized inspector is not supposed to issue a simple pass or fail grade. The report describes the system and its observed condition, but the law prohibits the inspector from giving a pass or fail determination or graded assessment of functionality. So, if somebody tells you the septic failed, slow the conversation down and ask, what exact adverse condition did the inspector document? Was the component damaged? Was there visible surfacing or ponding? Was part of the system inaccessible, or did the inspector recommend evaluation by another professional? Was the system operating as intended? Those details matter because different findings can produce very different consequences and possible solutions. An inspector is also not a complete evaluation of the property's soil suitability. Soil observations at the dispersal field are limited to visible signs such as saturation, surfacing, and ponding. Now, what happens if an inspection identifies a problem? First, don't panic and don't immediately agree to replace an entire system based on a vague statement. Get the written report, identify the specific condition, determine whether inspector recommended further evaluation, then obtain guidance and estimates from the appropriately licensed professionals. The outcome may depend on the property, the system, the contract, and the seriousness of the condition. A buyer might ask the seller to complete a repair. The parties might negotiate a credit or another solution. The seller might decide to investigate and address the issue before proceeding. In other circumstances, the finding could affect the buyer's loan or willingness to purchase the home. This is why discovering a serious septic problem 3 days before closing is far worse than gathering information and making a plan before the property reaches the market in the first place. So, however, that does not mean every seller should automatically order a complete inspection before they list their home. A pre-listing inspection can give you information and time to respond, but it can also reveal conditions that may need to be disclosed or addressed. The correct decision depends on what you already know about the system, its age, maintenance history, property condition, and likely buyer or financing requirements. That decision should be made intentionally with your real estate agent and when appropriate licensed septic, legal, or environmental professionals. Not because somebody online scared you into ordering a service, okay? Here are the 5 steps I would want a septic property seller to take before listing. First, locate the permit, design, and available health department records. Number 2, gather pumping, maintenance, repair, and operator reports. Third, identify the tank access points and general location of the drain field without digging or disturbing the system yourself. And fourth, disclose known material defects honestly and discuss the correct Virginia disclosure requirements with your agent or an attorney. And fifth, decide whether obtaining professional information before listing would put you in a stronger position or whether the inspection should be handled according to the terms negotiated with the buyer. The real danger is not simply owning a house with a septic. Thousands of Virginia properties use septic systems every day. The danger is entering the transaction with missing records, blocked access, the wrong inspector, unclear expectations about pumping, and no plan if the report identifies an adverse condition. Preparation gives you more options. Surprises take options away. If you own a home, farm, acreage, or equestrian property with a septic anywhere in the Hampton Roads area, just comment the word septic, or like I said, I'll put everything in the description below and I'll send that checklist over to you today. And if you're considering selling and want a straightforward, no pressure conversation about how to prepare the property, please just contact me directly. I'm Scott Stamper, the Cowboy Real Estate Agent, and I always give you the truth, even when the truth isn't the easiest thing to hear. You'll find all my contact information in the description below. I'm Scott Stamper, and I'll catch you down the road.